The UEFA Women's Champions League quarter-final draw has been concluded, and we have got our 8 final teams and our 4 final matchups. So let's talk about it. Regardless of what teams and what matchups we were going to get, purely looking at the seeded and the unseeded teams, we were guaranteed fireworks, and I think we're getting plenty of them. This is how your quarter finalists look like. We've got Bayern against Arsenal, Lyon versus Chelsea, Roma is going to be taking on the mighty Barcelona, and then lastly we've got PSG and from Bundesliga leaders Wolfsburg. The first leg is going to be taking place on March 21st, March 22nd, depending on how the fixtures fall. Teams who finish at the top of their table means that they have a home advantage in the second leg. This is also a reminder that we don't have any away or home goals anymore. It's purely on aggregate. If you score 10 goals in the away game, if you score 10 goals in the home game, it doesn't matter. It's the same amount of goals. If the teams are tied on aggregate in the second leg, that means they go to extra time. If they're also tied there, then it moves on to penalties. Starting off with Chelsea and Lyon here, the reigning champions of the respective leagues are going to face off. I mean, what a great European matchup this is. The two previously met back in the 2019 semi-final where Chelsea drew the first game 1-1, but Lyon did move away with a win in the second game. 4 years later, and two of the biggest dogs in Europe are going head-to-head. I mean, this very much could have been a final matchup, but we're getting spoiled here and we're getting it early in the quarterfinals and we're getting 2 legs of it. Lyon did open their campaign in quite a disastrous manner, losing their first game against Arsenal 5-1. They also drew with Juventus, which made them finish second in the table behind Arsenal. Lyon obviously were majorly hit with a massive amount of injuries. That surely but slowly is starting to come back. Madri, Ellie Carpenter, Marijan, a lot of these players that were significantly hit from the squad are coming back slowly but surely. A big question mark still loops around Ada Hegerberg, but if we are to compare Lyon right now and the current squad that they have to what they had against Arsenal, it is a much improved squad. They're also the reigning European champions, which is something that could not and should not be underestimated. They do heavily rely on the fullbacks, and having Ellie Carpenter back alongside with Salma Basho on the other end is going to be massively stabilizing to what and how Lyon really play. That is something that was stripped away, and you could see it in their performances both in the league and in the Champions League, is that because they lost their main fullbacks that were so integral into how they play and how they build up, it almost took a chunk of what Lyon is. When they signed Vanessa Giles, she was also injured. Now she's playing regularly and has been very, very solid for the French side. They're ruthless up top, but they're also coming up against another extremely ruthless Chelsea. Chelsea's current form is hard to argue with. They lost the first opening WSL game. This is a trend that they do every single year, is lose the opening game and just go on to win the league. Something that we've seen Chelsea get better at is managing away games, and I think this was an important lesson that they learned last campaign when they were knocked out in the group stages. That crazy tempo isn't happening as fast, is not happening as rapidly, and they're able to manage their tempo. They're able to manage their how they want to kind of not rush everything. The second game is always an advantage, and so for them it kind of actually plays pretty well in how they're able to play their cards, manage away games pretty well, because this is how things are going to fall for you later on. Lauren James is a player that we didn't see much in the last few campaigns of the Champions League, but it's undoubtable that she has been crucial in whatever success that they're having domestically. Plenty of questions if Pernilla Harder would be back for then, but Guro Wrighton, Sam Kerr, and Lauren James have been looking very, very sharp up top. For this game though, I'm mostly looking forward to see Erin Cuthbert battle it out with Henri. I think that's going to be a matchup to really enjoy, as well as whoever fullback comes up against Lauren James, because that would also be fireworks. This game can go either way. It's very much split 50-50. I honestly cannot think of a winner that is going to come out of this game. Both teams have to come in on their best days and have to execute whatever game plan they've prepared for the best of their abilities. Winner of this game does move on to the semi-final to face either Barcelona or Roma. So not an easy road ahead at all. Speaking of Barcelona and Roma, this is Roma's first Champions League debut. They're the 55th team in Europe to reach the stage of the competition, but going up against Barcelona in your debut campaign is definitely not a red carpet rolled out for you. They are currently sitting top of the Serie A table, 8 points clear ahead of Juventus and Fiorentina, who are tied in second and third place. This is a team that was reestablished back in 2018, and the strides that they have made this year is honestly quite inspirational and a blueprint to how a lot of new founded teams want to be ran. And I think many would argue this, but I think they didn't end up in an easy group. They had Wolfsburg, and who I thought they were going to compete it out with Slavia Praha. What they showed us is they were not going to compete it with Slavia Praha, and in fact, they drew with Wolfsburg. That's not an easy task at all, and they actually limited a lot of what Wolfsburg does, and that's purely because of how unorthodox they play. Their main strengths come from the wingers, where the striker actually kind of drops a little bit more back forward to almost play as a false nine, really. That's not so much a thing that we see anymore, especially not on the game at this high level, but the way they execute it offers a lot of problems and kind of just unorthodox ways to deal with them for the other defense team. Hard to stop, I say, but they're going up against Barcelona, who you have to applaud how well they have been able to adapt without Alexia Putellas. That's their captain, that's their leader in the midfield, that is the number 10. That is a massive portion of how Barcelona play, how the philosophy and the core actually principles move out. They adapted very well. They didn't lose how Barcelona plays. And something that's very important is that they are still very flexible in games and they can come up with any game plan against any team. That last one is one to be applauded because it's one thing adapting to how you already play. You can the players are already there. You can mold them around. But having that flexibility mid-game and having that flexibility against any game plan that you come up against is not an easy one to mold around. And you have to give credit to what they've been able to do. But they have had their fair amount of challenges in the Champions League. They lost to Bayern Munich. They also lost the final last year to Lyon. And during that semi-final run, they lost to Wolfsburg. Their losses come up in the Champions League, and that's purely telling to how good the Champions League is. And the competition is just so high. It's so tight. Uwcl is in another world. She's having the season of her own, really kind of taking that role of, right, we've got Jenny Hermoso who left, Alexia's out, Graham Hansen's also injured, and so Uwcl getting on form, doing and terrorizing what she's been doing is great news for Barcelona. This will be a great challenge for Roma to see how they can adapt. Do I see them beating Barcelona both games? I don't think so. I think that's just a tough task of any team. The winner of this, like I previously mentioned, will move on to face either Chelsea or Lyon. That one, I do not have a prediction, but let's just imagine either Lyon or Chelsea versus Barcelona in the Camp Nou. I mean, wow. Last year's final was Barcelona against Lyon. The year before it was Barcelona versus Chelsea. Whichever semi-final we get now is going to be a repetition of a final in the last 2 years, which I think is a pretty neat thing. Moving on to Bayern and Arsenal, I've already looked at the odds, and the odds heavily favor Bayern, but I'm going to play devil's advocate here, and I think it's going to be another 50-50, very similar to Lyon and Chelsea, where you don't have a clear winner. Bayern aren't necessarily flying in their domestic league. They're 8 points behind Wolfsburg, one off Frankfurt, who is in the third spot. They lost to Wolfsburg, they've drawn with Frankfurt, and didn't necessarily have the easiest ride in the group stages. If you remember their first game against Benfica, one of my favorite games, to be honest, in this group stages campaign, they were 2-0 down until Georgia Stanway pulled up some miracle. They were able to pull a 3-2 win. They lost to Barcelona, but what they did do is they did put an incredible blueprint on how to beat Barcelona. Absolutely masterclass, outclass Barcelona in that second leg. I think the Roma technical staff is really going to be studying that game. But looking at some of the struggles that they've had, they've obviously in more of a transitional period. They've just gotten a new head coach in the summer. I'd argue that's adapted them to a better team. That's changed them into a better team that we've seen previously before, given the fact that they're still in a transitional period in some ways. One key contributor to all of these struggles that I've just mentioned is that they somehow decide to lose the game, which they lose in the midfield. Watch any of their games. If their midfield is having a great time, they're absolutely flying by, slapping teams left and right, having no issue. If that midfield is not having the best time, then that is really when you see Bayern struggle. Their defensive line in the back has only let in 3 domestic goals. Just 3. They've played 11 games in a very, very tough competition Bundesliga league, and they've only conceded 3. So Arsenal do definitely have a challenge in making sure that they finish their chances when they get to, which we will get to in a second. You look at that midfield that I've just been talking about, Linda Dahmen, Sarah Zadrazil, Stanway. I mean, it is a midfield superstars. And why I think this game is so tight is this is going to be purely a battle of midfielders in this game. That's what's going to be the decider of it. Both teams have not been the most clinical finishing their attacks or that final third. It's that midfield of Leah Volti, Kim Little, and Monum going up against Zadrazil, Stanway, and Linda Dahmen. I mean, it's going to be so good. It's no surprise that Arsenal have been hit very, very hard. Obviously, with Viviana Miedema and Beth Mead out with ACL injuries, they did go out and recruit Catherine Cole and Palova in the January window. Both very young superstars that have shown great promise so far. With all due respect, they're not the level of Viviana Miedema and Beth Mead. And this is not to take anything from them. They're still very young in their career and could possibly go on to show big potential like that. But that's not who Arsenal needs to shine out. They need Stina Blackstenius and Lena Hurtig to finish and bury. Like I mentioned, Bayern is not a team that would concede a lot. The winner of that is going to move on and face the winner of PSG and Wolfsburg, so we could very much see a Wolfsburg versus Bayern in the semi-final. A classic. Wolfsburg are actually right behind Barcelona in the odds to win the Champions League, and so definitely one of the big threats this year. You talk about them being a threat, well, you have to talk about Uwcl being arguably one of the most on-form strikers today. This is the first time that the Polish striker has been given the chance to perform and put goals and numbers together, because injuries have been her worst enemy. Since joining Wolfsburg, she hasn't been given the run of games that we have seen her get this season, purely because she's just been out with injuries. Now that she's gone those minutes, now she's gone those games, she's able to combine, put chemistry links together, but she doesn't even need all those. Put her in front of the goal, anywhere outside or inside the box, she can finish. She has the highest odds to win the Golden Boot of the Champions League. Not an easy odd to be winning. And this is not an easy stat to be winning, looking at that forward talent that you're actually kind of competing with. You've got Alexandra Popp. You've got Jules Brand, Jill Roord, Jane Jonsdottir, Vazmuth. I mean, those are just players on top of my head that I can mention, and it's a pretty scary bunch. Their opponents, PSG, I wouldn't say are having the season of their life. PSG just got a new manager in the summer. A fair amount of players coming in and leaving. Lika Martens, a player still that hasn't clicked in quite with them yet. Jackie Gronin showing some good potential, not her full potential yet, I wouldn't say. This could very much have been a battle of which striker can score more, Eva Pahor or Katoto, but Katoto's out with an ACL injury. PSG still not quite able to adapt to that. They're still moving slowly in the attacking third. Diani simply just hasn't been able to put that striker game together, purely because they don't have a profile of a striker like Katoto does. They struggle to get going against Real Madrid and Chelsea, something that you can't struggle with Wolfsburg. You struggle to get going, they're going to beat you pretty bad. And those two teams do have a little bit of history, though. PSG did beat Wolfsburg back in 2015's quarterfinal. They are two-time runner-ups. They're looking to get another runner-up season as well, but I just simply don't think PSG has got it together. They look too disconnected on the field, too slow, too predictable. There's no combination, there's no creativity in there. And I think when you go up against a team as skilled and as good as Wolfsburg, you might struggle a little too much, more than you like. So for this one, I am favoring Wolfsburg to go on and snatch it to the semi-final. But, I mean, overall, we've got incredible matchups here. Some great games, ones that you have to be looking forward to and itching to watch. Lyon and Chelsea for me is in the air. So is Bayern and Arsenal. I want to hear your opinions on those two, as well as the two other ones that I did predict. Do you agree with me? Do you not agree? Floor is open. I want to hear it. It's going to be exciting, covering the entire Champions League, the quarterfinal, the semifinals, final. It's going to be a good run for the next few months. So if you want to stay updated and to continue enjoying the beautiful game, make sure you subscribe to me here on YouTube and follow me on Twitter. And I will see you later.